The game of entrepreneurship is so ugly. You make one bad mistake, you're dead. The business world, it's a very mafia-esque type of a business. If you look the other way, just because you just made $1 million in a month and you start getting very arrogant, boom, you're wiped out. If the vision's crystal clear and then you know how to sell it, the rest is history. I'm running a business and I'm competing in a marketplace, a $5 trillion industry. How is that even possible for a guy like me, an immigrant? I like immigrants because immigrants have a chip, they have a point to prove. People that were born in America, you guys have no clue what gift is being given to you. Being raised in Iran, I missed the part of being playful. We were in war and all we're hearing is the whistles. Not a lot of stuff throws you off at that point. Self-improvement became an obsession.
If you're trying to be the best version of yourself every day, that's how I think you get to greatness.
It's not about me against you. It's about PBD against PBD's capacity, and I'm chasing this. Spend some time asking the right questions from yourself. Ask yourself what you're looking for. From there on, if you stay true to the vision, the world better get out of your way.
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of.
As the host of Valuetainment, Patrick Bet-David has had some unusual conversations. From mob bosses to Hollywood actors to NBA players, he really seeks out unusual people and gets them to tell all. But he had a weird journey in getting there. He was born in Iran, spent time in the military and then in poverty, and built himself up as a businessman and now owns a large insurance company. But he really is about teaching people how to get to the next level in business, and it's all about going inside. It's about finding your limitations and your limiting behaviors and trying to correct those and push yourself to the next level. I love Patrick. I love what he's about, and we had a really hard conversation. If you want to know what it takes to succeed in life. And at London Real, we push people every single day in our academy to succeed, whether they want to start a business from scratch in 8 weeks, whether they want to publicly speak, or they want to broadcast themselves with their own podcast. We do all of that. This is a little bit more about it.
London Real doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Real Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, we have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level, together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Patrick Bet-David, the creator of the YouTube channel Valuetainment, which takes complex leadership management and entrepreneurial ideas and converts them into simple life lessons. After fleeing to America from Iran at age 10, you later joined the military and then went to work in finance before starting your own company, PHP Agency, in 2009. Valuetainment now has over 1 million subscribers, posting interviews with a wide range of high-performance people, including mob bosses, Hollywood actors, and NBA Hall of Famers. Patrick, welcome to London Real.
Yes, good to be here.
Great to have you. First of all, how's the city treating you? What do you think of London? What's your perspective?
You know, I got to tell you, when I was coming in, everybody's like, oh my gosh, London, you know, they're snobby, they're full of themselves, et cetera, but nice people. I mean, very pleasant, you know, good restaurants, great food. It's got if London, you know, it would be a combination between Paris, New York. If Paris and New York came together and had a baby, it would be something like London.
Okay.
That's the feeling I get.
A little style, a little bit of a buzz.
I like it a lot. I mean, that would be an understatement. Every year we decide to take our guys, our agents, to some part of the world, and we go and have a good time. Like we just went to Croatia, we went to Santorini, and we went to Venice. We went to Dubai prior to that. We went to Tuscany and had a 20,000 square foot place, and we brought everybody and their spouses and chefs. The next one is Tahiti. This is on the list as a following one after my trip here. I'm amazed by the city.
Yeah, I love it. You know, I was in New York for many years, and you know, it's great when you're young, but it can be like super intense, that place.
Yes.
For me, this is a kindler, gentler place. It's got some green space. People are nice, access to the continent. So yeah, you got to come back.
Oh, this is definitely not going to be the last time.
First of all, I want to start and just say, I appreciate what you do, you know, because there's not many people in this space that are going out there and putting out these long-form conversations. And I know how hard it is. And I always say the mark of a professional is someone who makes it look easy. And you make it look easy, but I know it's not. And you're on the road putting out some pretty fantastic, you know, conversations that are out of the mainstream, even the mainstream YouTube podcast audience. And so that's incredible. And before we get into everything, and I want to go deep into lots of stuff, I was wondering, first of all, I'm sure you get asked this, but I want to know, top 3 favorite guests of all time, and how do you choose a guest?
So top 3 favorite, obviously Michael Francis has to be on the list because we're very good friends now.
Okay,
Like
and who is he for people that don't know?
He is the highest paid mobster since Capone, $2 billion of career earnings. He was making 6 to 8 a week, reporting to Paul Castellano and Serpico. And he had dealings with Gotti, he had dealings with Gravano. I mean, he had dealings with everybody. On the cover of Fortune magazine, 1986, they had the 50 most powerful mobsters in America. He was on that list, the youngest on that list at 35 years old. And so that's Michael Francis. You know, John McAfee was a creative one. It was a different one because John McAfee, the founder of McAfee Antivirus, right?
But back to the mobster really quick.
Yeah.
How can he talk to you about that stuff?
You know, it's a question that everyone asks, and it's a question that I ask myself. I think the reason why he can't talk about that stuff today is because Mayor Giuliani did a good job getting rid of the mob. Him and Donnie Brasco, which is AKA Joe Pistone, right?
Okay, right.
If you've seen the movie Donnie Brasco, Giuliani played the role of trying to get rid of everybody. 4 times he tried to arrest Francis. He couldn't do it. On the last case, Francis was on for like 50 years or 100 years, some number like that, and then he ended up only getting 8 years, and he went and did the time and came back. And then he just says, I'm gonna change my life. And then from that moment on, a lot of people went to prison. So their street credit that they had in the 80s disappeared.
Okay.
So the mob world of New York, Chicago, Philadelphia today isn't what it was in the 80s. 80s was peak. 80s was, they had judges bought, they had cops bought, they had chief of the police department bought, they had congressmen, senators bought, they had people at the top bought, they had, you know, even in the earlier 40s, they had J. Edgar Hoover bought. They had a lot of these guys bought. And when you have things on them, the powerful people, you have info on them, you can move a lot of things. Today, they don't have that same pull. So for him to talk about it openly, there's not really anybody in the marketplace that's going to do anything about it because everybody's in their 70s and their 80s or they're dead.
Okay, so the other mobsters don't care, and then the feds and the government doesn't care to put him away so he can talk.
It's not that they don't care. Some of them have called me, and they call me, and the phone sounds like an F-bomb for an hour. And I'm being that serious
Law
with
enforcement.
You. Law enforcement is one, but more mobsters, people who are in the world
Okay.
of mob. They'll call me and they'll say, you know, the story with this, and I got to tell you with this, and da-da-da-da. I'm like, listen.
They want to tell you their version.
They want to tell me their version.
But they won't go on camera.
They won't do it. No, it's
Okay.
very interesting. But I said, so why don't you come and talk about it? No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Okay, interesting. So Michael's that part. John McAfee would be another one, because McAfee, you know, very, very different, strange kind of a personality. You know, he was, if social media was around in the early 90s, McAfee would be Dan Bilzerian on steroids. That's what he would have been, because he was so eccentric. You know, if you see some of the stuff this guy, he did an antivirus commercial snorting cocaine and with 20 prostitutes in the video. It's a very weird, and that video went viral. I mean, you can go see it on YouTube. So he sold the company for $100 million. We sat down at his house that he wouldn't give us the address until 2 hours before the interview, and gives us the address. We go to his place. 5 guys there with AK-47s, with M16s. 9 German Shepherds are outside. The entire time with the interview, he's got a gun right here. In the middle of the interview, somebody, you know, knocks on the door. Guy jumps to the door with guns. I'd say McAfee was another one that was interesting. I like Pistone because the story of Donnie Barasco and being an undercover FBI agent. You know, how do you go 6 years and play undercover in the Bonanno family? I mean, you and I may be able to act for an hour, maybe 5 minutes, maybe a day. A great actor can act for Daniel Day-Lewis, maybe 6 months, Last of the Mohicans. He gets into that part. Can you imagine acting for 6 years? Yeah. That's what this guy did. So to be able to speak to that guy and ask him and say, look, you're an FBI agent, okay, for 6 years, but you were so into deep, you're partying, you're having that life. Did you at one point turn and say, you know, you wanted that life more than being the FBI agent? Right. And he gave me the answer, but I didn't believe him. I said, I don't know if I buy it.
What did he say?
He said, you know, no, I was always an FBI. I take a bullet for you. I take a bullet for him. I take a bullet from Bob. I'm not taking a bullet for a mobster. I said, you know, you seem like, you act more like the mafia right now than Michael Francis does. Because when you speak to Pistone, if you had to sit down right now and you don't know Michael Francis or Joe Pistone, and I tell you, you have to decide who's a mafia, who was a mobster, you'll never say Michael Francis. You'll say Joe Pistone was a former mobster.
And Michael's what, more soft-spoken and less the typical gangster you see in the movies?
He is so soft-spoken.
Interesting.
He is so soft-spoken.
And that tells you a lot about business too.
Yes, and he was going to be a doctor. Like, you went and got MIT, you went through that direction of what you did yourself, you know, as a guy that you do grades and then nobody gets accepted. And like MIT would never accept somebody like me. You go on MIT, you got to be somebody. This guy's going to become a doctor. Michael Francis is getting to become a doctor. His dad goes to prison. He gets upset. He goes to prison and says, I'm not going to be a doctor. Dad's like, what are you talking about? I said, I'm going to be a made man. He says, you're not going to do this life. He says, I'm doing it, Dad. You can't stop me. And then he changes from wanting to be a doctor to being a made man to making $2 billion career earnings. So that's a very interesting dynamic, because what are you going to do? Be a doctor making $300 grand a year while these guys are making $300 grand a week?
Yeah.
Psychologically, that's tough to accept.
Yeah.
Right? It's tempting.
How do you explain this fascination with the underworld, the mob bosses? If you go to your website, you've got movies to watch, which is great, and you got Casino, American Gangster, great movie, by the way.
Yes.
The Godfather series, Casino. You know, what is it? Why? Why is that fascinating? Is it the entrepreneurship?
You know, I just think there's a big element of that. I think there's a big I mean, I grew up, my family was power plays, right? My mother's side, they were all communists. And so they hated the rich people all the time. Rich people are greedy. I mean, I hated rich people growing up. I had an uncle who was the richest person in our family, and I almost didn't like this guy because my mom hated rich people. And they would talk about how bad rich people were. My dad said they were imperialists. And imperialists, you know, they believe poor people are lazy. So imagine rich people are greedy, poor people are lazy. I mean, these are bipolar type of a relationship, and these guys are fighting all the time. And we had a lot of family politics, and I never liked it. I never liked being bullied. I never liked being pushed around. I never liked those games at all. And so that kind of put me in a position where you had to learn the games people are trying to play with you to try to pin you against somebody. And if you don't know it, you're going to get caught up in the spider web. And all of a sudden, 5 years goes by saying, why didn't I like you? What was the issue here? And so, you know, the mobsters, the mafia family, that's the ultimate game, because In the business world, the worst thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to be put out of business. That's fine, okay? And you're going to have to find a way to come back, 3 years, recover, save money, make some good connections, and recreate yourself and come back and do something. In the mob world, you make one bad mistake, you're dead. It's game over. So it's the ultimate punishment you get. And so if you're willing to play in that game, and you're willing to put that as the possibility of your worst case scenario, I want to know how that person's wired. I want to know those power plays. We run a business and we have a lot of enemies. The bigger we're getting, the more enemies we have. People who were my good friends 10 years ago, I hear stuff they're saying behind my back where I'm like, okay, this is all starting to make sense because it's competition. I get it. You want to take a marketplace away from you, and I'm trying to make a name for myself. And we're coming up in an industry, financial industry, insurance industry, where the average agent is a 59-year-old white male, and we are a 34-year-old Hispanic female. That's not normal. We are a very weird company where the CEO is from Iran. What Iranian CEO is going to compete in the financial industry and life insurance? That's a very political, very mafia-esque type of a business. Who's this new regime coming and taking over? So how do you do without stepping on the wrong person's toes and respecting that guy that just wants pure respect? He's not wanting anything from you, just wants you to make sure in the rooms you respect him. All those dynamics you got to learn. Obviously, a lot of mistakes I've made as a rookie CEO coming up, but that's my fascination.
And half of your workers more than half are women, more than half are
Yes.
immigrants as well.
Yes.
Like you are, like I am now. That's a completely different footprint, like you said, than your competitors. Why? Why do that?
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? The eyeballs of an immigrant, look at the eyes of an immigrant. It's different than somebody that's born in America. I mean, for me, I go to America and I tell them, I speak to people, I'm like, you guys have no clue what gift has been given to you, especially people that were born in America, that they don't know any different. Like they'll get into a debate, and I had a big debate the other day in Argentina with this one guy, and he's just going off about how America sucks, and he's making $1.5 million a year income. I'm like, what do you mean America sucks? I said, can you tell me another place you've lived for 2 years? No. How do you know? I said, so how do you know about another country? It's like the kid who's got a great father that's the disciplinarian bitching to another kid who lost his father in war. What do you mean, about your father's a bad person? I wish I had your father. That's what the kid's saying. So for me, it's like I'm living in America saying, are you kidding me? This country allows a guy like me, 1.8 GPA, parents divorced, street kid, hoodlum, goes to the army. I get out, I get this fascination to want to read books. One guy believes in me, and then I get obsessed, and next thing you know, I'm running a business and I'm competing in a marketplace in a $5 trillion industry. How is that even possible for a guy like me? So that's why I resonate with immigrants. I like immigrants because immigrants have a chip, and I like women in this business because women have a chip. My number one earner is a woman, by the way, Sheena. I like them. They're chippier. They have a point to prove. There's something going on there.
Same is true in women's MMA, some of the best fights out there.
That's right.
They don't have to be there. They really have to push themselves to be there. And when I watch them, I'm just like, wow, these are people that are spirited. They really have to prove themselves.
It's so much easier to work with somebody that's got a point to prove. It's so much easier. I mean, look at basketball. You got a guy like Vince Carter. He comes into the gym, jumps 49 inches. Literally jumps out of the gym. The way he jumped and he would do dunks, insanity. They call him Vinsanity, right? And you got a guy like Kobe Bryant that's coming up. He doesn't jump as high as the other guy does. And everybody's thinking Vince Carter's going to have a better career in North Carolina, following Jordan's career. Kobe's got a chip on his shoulder. Puts his number 24. Why 24? Jordan's 23. You're putting one over Jordan, 24. Scores 33,000 points. Obviously doesn't pass Jordan up, but the chip with less talent didn't have Jordan's hands. Look what Kobe does. 20 years with one team he plays. There's something very special about a controlled chip. The key word there is control.
Right, and that's been the story of your life.
It's been a story of my life because every time the chip's not been in control, I've screwed up, and God knows I've screwed up so many times. Oh my gosh, I've screwed up so many times when my chip has not been controlled.
Which looks like what when the chip is not controlled? You get angry, it becomes all about you?
Yeah, it becomes all about you and you lose perspective. This is why I don't like alcohol, and this is why I don't like drugs, because you're not in control. A substance is doing that, right? And so imagine, this is why I don't drink coffee, by the way. I don't drink any coffee.
Okay. It magnifies the
It
chip.
just makes it bigger. Yeah, I mean, for me, that whole situation of seeing where I go with the rage, and then I see this guy and I see that rage hurts you and puts you 3 steps back. Listen, you got to control that rage.
Right.
But it's a good thing that you have this rage, because if we can take this, 97 octane fuel and we put it in the right engine, controlled, oh my gosh. So we need to make sure that high octane is controlled, because high octane in the wrong place can blow up a building.
Yeah. And how do you go about controlling that? Because when I hear of someone with a chip on my shoulder, you kind of think someone that wants to fight. And then what happens is you get caught up in the fight and not the result. I'm going to beat that guy. You're not going to say that about me. And that's short-term thinking.
Yes.
How do you control that?
So for me, here's what happened, and I'll give you the perfect example. So I had this conversation with our guys the other day. I said, look, there's nothing wrong with being very competitive. I said, but as competitive as you are, it's got a limit to it. What do you mean? Let me explain to you what I mean by this. So it's very good when you're coming up and there's competition, because someone's making you feel inferior, so you have to step up, or you flight, right? You fight, flight, you freeze. Oh my gosh, he's better than me. I'm not gonna do anything. I can't beat this guy, and boom, you just become a regular guy. Or, you flight, I'm not gonna do this business, whatever, and secretly you're not doing it because the other guy is better than you. So why am I gonna stay in this space? I'm just gonna leave this space. Yeah. Or you decide to go fight and see how you do. Okay, so if we go fight, I mean, if it's just a direct competition that you do, there's a limit. Eventually, you get to a point where you say to yourself, I think I can compete. Like, we were about to shut down the channel in the first 2 years. And we said, I don't know if this is going to be me. I don't know if the audience resonates. Maybe we just don't have it. Then we said, let's change the channel. Let's go from Patrick Bet-David to calling it Valuetainment. So then we changed the channel to Valuetainment. We took a complete different approach, because a lot of people want to brand names. I don't want a brand name. When I die, my name is only worth the legacy. I want to brand a business because I can sell that business, is what I want to do. It's a complete different approach. Some people agree, some people don't. So I said, let's do Valuetainment. Why? We're bringing value, we're entertaining, and it's becoming a movement. So let's see how this resonates. Then we adjusted. Then it started growing. Then we could compete. Then we started growing. Then it was no longer about the competition. Not because we're beating the competition, because PewDiePie is killing everybody, 69 million subs. So if you're really going to compete, you're going to get your ass handed to you. So the guy at the top's got 69 million. What are you going to do to get to 69 million? Then maturity for me, and this happened at around 33, 34, 35, the main outcome became capacity. That's what it became. And I realized everyone's capacity is different in life. Your capacity may be higher in life, but you became an underachiever even though you have a lot more potential than I do. My capacity may be smaller in life, but I become an overachiever at my smaller capacity and I do better in life. You could even be an achiever and you still do good in life, and you beat somebody who, let's just say, is not as talented than you. Like, let's just say yourself. You're an MIT guy, you're all this stuff. People are expecting you to win. So some of the kids you went to school with, if you just competed with those guys, that's like an 18-year-old kid bullying a 14-year-old. You're going to beat them. It's not fair to compete there, right? So on the outside, we can very easily fool ourselves into thinking we're winning because we're always comparing down, versus if I compare to my capacity, I'm striving for something else, So once that chip went towards, Pat, here's what we're really fighting for. If this is really your capacity, and if you constantly look at the marketplace about competition, and eventually, let's just say you beat a few people, then what? That doesn't necessarily mean you reached that level of capacity. I'm striving for this. That adjustment in that mindset, believe it or not, helped me have a better relationship with other people, helped me have a better relationship with competitors, because it's not about me against you. It's about PBD against PBD's capacity, and I'm chasing this. And it gave a lot more peace, joy, comfort, not in a comfortable level, but comfort knowing, we're playing a different game now.
Yeah. Some of my greatest guests on this show compete with themselves, including Dorian Yates, and he was the guy that always wanted to beat himself. And I think that's why he got to those levels, because it wasn't about that guy or that guy, which also brings weird energy and weird results to the people around you. If you're trying to be the best version of yourself every day, that's how I think you get to greatness. And that sounds like what you're trying to do.
I mean, Dorian Yates, I met Dorian Yates in 1999.
Oh, wow.
Let me tell you, I mean, when I saw Dorian, I have a picture with him and I at Venice Beach, okay? And you'll see this 18-year-old guy that got out of the Army. It was 1999, a 21-year-old guy that got out of the Army. And I'm like, I'm gonna go be Mr. Olympia. That's what I'm thinking to myself. And I see Dorian Yates. And that's a perfect example of a guy that, I mean, his back, the way he built his back, he could pretty much fly. If he jumped off a building and just did a lat spread, that guy could probably fly in the middle of the sky with the way he built his back. Yeah, great story with Dorian Yates. By the way, props to you on that interview. That was an incredible interview, and you were able to take that the topic deep in areas that not a lot of people take in that space. And I think it was necessary. Somebody needed to do it, and so you spearhead that topic of steroids and growth hormone, and he went there, which is respect to him as well, for willing to be open about it.
Yeah, it was great to have him there. We were right place, right time. What do they say? The harder your practice, the more lucky you get.
Yes.
You know, and so we were there, you know, right when that happened. Tell me more about Valuetainment, because I think from the outside, on the first look, people see it as, okay, simple lessons I can learn if I want to be an entrepreneur. But what I see from you is a guy going through a lot of introspection and asking people to look down deeper inside yourself and saying, okay, what do I really want? What are my core values? What do I have to do to get myself out of these bad patterns, to get that Ferrari, to get that business? And you talked about this time where you went to Malibu Beach and you asked yourself questions. And I've never heard anyone talk about this. And you're sitting there alone asking yourself questions and really digging deep down into your soul as a way to get you to the next level in life and business. And it's not what you'd expect from a guy trying to teach entrepreneurs. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very emotional. It's very emotional because your life is a combination of different events you've witnessed. Like, you know, there's a part of it that's our DNA, right? Let's just say from the moment you're born, like I have my 3 kids, from the moment they were born, their DNA's been the same. Like the middle one was a charmer. From day one, he was a charmer. Like his teachers would say, he was 2 years old, I can't discipline your son because he just gives me the smile and I have to give him what he wants, right? And my oldest one was always a thinker and observant and very creative, and he liked vampires and scaring people, and he liked to talk about sharks, and he liked scary movies. And my young one, we never told her to pick stuff up or help her brothers out or bring the shoes to me. That's DNA. I don't think that's like parents can take credit. Let me tell you the kind of kids I raised, you know, I don't think that's what it is. So we have a DNA, right? That's our thumb, that's our fingerprint that we have in the world. But then outside of that, there's experiences. There's trials, there's memories of mom and dad fighting, there's words mom said, there's words dad said, there's words a friend said, there's a breakup, heartbreak, setback, something the teacher said, a injury in sports, you were coming up, you almost made it to the next level, and your knee or your back, or you got knocked out publicly in front of your peers and everybody saw you getting knocked out, or an embarrassing moment publicly that happened that's still with you, you're still carrying it. You know, your girl left you for somebody else, your husband left you, your boyfriend left you. All of these things we carry, and we're pretty good at acting on the outside that we have everything under control, but we're afraid of facing this, so we avoid a lot of these situations. So for me, that one day, I got a set of these questions, and I said, I'm gonna go and address these questions. I went to Malibu Beach, it's right off Zuma, and Matador is what it's called, and I sat there and went through all these questions, 6 hours, I'm up right on the water. And I tell you, Brian, I was like writing it down, and I would go to this moment, and I'd never done this before. And I start writing it. And I start writing, I'm like, oh my gosh, and I just start crying. I'm like, oh, come on, knock it off, you little crybaby. More, deeper, deeper, deeper. Why? How has this affected your life? Maybe this is the reason why you keep dating the same type of girls. Maybe this is the reason why the same types of people don't get along with you. Maybe this is the reason why you don't like these types of people, because this, and then all of a sudden I'm looking at this saying, oh my gosh, if you go like this, you're gonna be a monster, kid. We got to figure this out. And so then there was almost a moment of liberation saying, look, you know, this is okay. This is your product. This is who you are. Now we got to take some of this stuff and know the trends that's happening and be self-aware to know that the next time this happens, it's not the person's fault. You're looking at this person and you're thinking this person's your ex or your mom or your dad. It's not. It's that situation. This doesn't make it right. It just means something you experience. Give the person an opportunity. So it helped me go deeper in relationships rather than I was a very private guy. I don't let people in. Like most people did. I would date a girl and you had no idea I was with her for 3 years. People had no idea I had a girlfriend. Private. I had girlfriends. People wouldn't know. What's Pat up to? Who does he date? Nobody knew. Like one time I was with a girl in a company and we would go all the places. Nobody knew her and I were together. Finally, all of a sudden, one person finds out 3 years later. How did that happen? I said, how did you find out? So it was very private to me. And then that made me, with the help of social media, realize we're all naked today. I'm naked, you're naked, everybody's naked. I need 5 minutes on social media to find out your political beliefs. Do you like Trump? Do you like Hillary? Do you like Merkel? Do you like the prime minister of here? Do you like political? Are you gun? Are you anti-gun? Are you, weed, legalized? It's very easy to figure out people nowadays because we're all naked. Mm-hmm. I can find that if you're married, complicated relationship, broken up, everything is naked. So rather than trying to fight it, we have to embrace it today. We got to figure out a way to embrace it today. And if you're not only embarrassed of who you are in a naked world, it's a very, very difficult life you're going to live. It's going to be a very difficult life for the rest of your life because the world's naked and you're trying to cover yourself up and everybody can see you. So we're almost forced to become a little bit more open, vulnerable, and say, this is who we are. One time I was on a flight coming back, oh my gosh, I'm not engaged yet. And they're wondering, when is Pat going to propose to his girl? I said, I'm just not right. I keep fighting it off. I keep pushing my girlfriend away at that time. I'm like, no, you can't handle being a guy like me. You just can't, there's no way in the world you could be with a guy like me. And then on one flight, I write down all these, and why are you pushing her away? This could actually be a good wife. This could actually be a good mother. Why are you and I wrote all these things down. I came back and I hid it in my briefcase. And one day, when I'm cleaning up my briefcase, I forgot the envelope and I left it there. And my wife read it. So I come home and she's crying. I said, why are you crying? She said, baby, I'm so sorry. I want you to know I don't want to pressure you. Don't worry about it. Whenever you're ready. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what's going on here? And I see the yellow notepad paper, 3 of them folded. And I'm like, please tell me you didn't read that. She says, no, I read it. And I'm sorry I did this, but I just was sitting there and I understand you so much better now. And I love you, baby. I don't care what happens. I'm like, oh my gosh. So the reaction I thought was going to come was a complete opposite reaction. Mm-hmm. It got us deeper. Right. It helped the relationship get deeper.
Which showed you need to be more open about who you are.
You do. Because listen, I don't know if my marriage is going to work out or not. Everybody asks me, so how's your marriage going? So listen, we take it 1 year at a time. Marriage is not an easy thing. It's very difficult. It's very complicated because you got a hard time getting along with yourself, let alone I got to get along with another person here. Are you kidding me?
Throw some kids in there.
And throw 3 kids in there? I mean, that's like a nuclear bomb possibly about to happen, right? So, but, best friendships, best relationships, you got to get deeper. And the deeper you get and more comfortable you are with you, your upside gets bigger and you actually get a chance to enjoy the ride rather than trying to act like somebody else the rest of your life. This is who Patrick Bet-David is. I am very comfortable with who I am.
Right, and constantly examining yourself is how you try to get to the next level. And you're kind of like Jocko Willink, taking extreme ownership of what's happened in your life. Why do I keep attracting these women, these types of business partnerships? Why do I keep getting screwed over in deals or passed over? It's their fault. And then you're like, wait a second, maybe it's my fault. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty advanced way of looking at things.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. It's very hard to go there because, I was having a conference call on my flight out to London with this couple, and we were speaking, and I said, look, this is the 4th time we're speaking in the last 2 years where the same things happened to you guys the last 2 years. I'm going to be very gentle with the feedback I'm going to give you, but here's also where I'm at. Every single time I've spoken to you guys the last 2 years when this has happened, your response always been somebody else's fault. And I'm hoping you use this, and this becomes the most painful experience for you, where you're finally willing to take full responsibility and we move on. And so again, push back. I said, guys, I can't help you. We need to get off the call. And then there was a breakthrough. You know what? You're right. We messed up. Let us get better at this. I said, okay, saying it is different than doing it. Let's see what you guys are going to do. Because, you work so hard to create momentum. And I told her, I said, I want you to explain it this way. I want to explain it to you in a different way when you think about business-wise. I said, think about it this way. I said, if you and your husband, you guys have been married how many years? She says, this many years. I said, think about how many minutes in a day. Think about how many hours in a day. Think about how many days in a year. You've been married 10 years, okay? Imagine if your husband does everything right in this 50,000 hours of you guys being together, okay? But just 2 minutes of it, he sleeps with a girl. How much influence does that 2 minutes have over the other 50,000 hours that he's done everything right with you? She says, everything. I said, that's how it is dealing with people. all it takes is 2 minutes to screw it up. So you got to realize when you're dealing with people that 2 minutes, you can't just slip and say, oh my gosh, I'm not perfect, you got to forgive me. I said, no, some of the things that you do, it's going to hurt people. You got to kind of control yourself a little bit more. And she said, I never thought about it that way. I said, so moving forward, start thinking about it that way. Maybe you'll treat the people you're working with slightly different because everybody's sensitive in their own ways. Your approach has got to change. Fine.
Tell me about entrepreneurship. What do most people not even understand about entrepreneurship? What does the 20-year-old out there who wants to be one not really know about what it really means to be that person?
Social media makes it nicer than it is. I'm gonna tell you. All these posts and motivation on the cars and the girls and the Ferraris and the Lambos and the planes and the jets. And by the way, here's what you gotta realize. I'm all for it. Like people who say, well, you shouldn't buy exotic, I'm not for that mindset. If you don't like it, no problem. If you do like it, no problem. I don't judge you. Whatever drives you, you go get it. For me, I drive a $406,000 car because in Iran, I would go to Shah's museum and he had Rolls Royce. And I said, one day I'd like to have a Rolls Royce. Great. So we're here. We're talking to the Rolls Royce community. We're doing a collaboration together with them. And so I wanted to get a Rolls Royce because it connects me. Every time I'm in the car, Shah comes to my mind. I have a painting of Shah on my wall. I like that. But the game of entrepreneurship is so ugly that if people actually knew how ugly was up front, very few would even do it. It's very ugly. It's very lonely. It's very frustrating. It exploits you at the highest level. You in the world of business, you don't just have one or two weaknesses. Imagine all of a sudden one day, 50 weaknesses are exposed, all at the same time. And everybody tells you, because it's you. Who wants that? No one wants that. And imagine a game where you always have to recreate yourself or else you lose. Like, let me put it to you this way. It's like working out, but you can't take a day off. You know how you work out, at least you got like a few days off to have your, regroup and all that stuff. For the first 2 to 5 years, if you look the other way just because you just made $1 million in a month and you start getting very cocky or arrogant, boom, you're wiped out. That's all it takes. It's a subtle look away to get knocked out. And so, a lot of these books, self-help books that you read and say, oh, you got to do this and you got to do this and you got to do that. They don't touch on the ugly part of running a business. Now, set the ugly part aside. The one part that outweighs being willing to tolerate all this pain is the fact that choices matters to you. If you're driven by choices, if you're driven by control, if you're driven by, being able to choose the kind of a life you want to live, that reward is so much higher than the pain you're going to have to put up, that you're willing to put up with the pain because you want this. Because what's the flip side? Here's the flip side. My 3 kids go to the same private school together. It's very expensive. Okay, you live in a decent community. You have a house with elevators and privates. You can have security. You can have nicer insurance, nicer protection, better advisors, better counselors, better money managers, better attorneys, better CPAs, better protection, all of that stuff. The choices, better places to go, people that you can associate with that are at your same level, if not higher than you, more things that you can have as choice. I'm not talking necessarily material things, choices. So if the choices and the controls that big of a motivation for you, you're going to be able to put up with the pain. But if the pain's too much for you and this doesn't really matter, you'll eventually go back to having a job.
So you think people are oversold right now on entrepreneurism because of social media?
But I tell you, we're oversold on everything. We're oversold on marriage. We're oversold on having kids. We're oversold on entrepreneurship. We are oversold on having kids. We are. I don't know how many 21-year-olds I hear saying, I feel like if I have a kid, my life will change. Yes, it will change. Maybe not for the best. Maybe you got to take your time. I feel like I love her, and the way I can show her I love her is by getting married. I don't know about that. I don't know if today's the time to get married at 22. I'm being very serious with you. Yeah. I mean, look, you and I, imagine being 18 years old with access to Tinder. Imagine being, I don't know that. I don't know what it is to swipe left, swipe left, swipe left, swipe right. Oh, let's go, beer, great. You want to go hook up? Let's go in the back of the car. This has become very normal. So sex has become a very, we kissed, it's cool. Hey, 3 girls this week. How? Where did you meet them? Oh, Tinder, swipe left, swipe right. What are you talking about? So where the value of that used to be more, it's not the same value as it is today because it's easier access today than it was before. So you got to question marriage too early. You got to actually ask, why do you want to get married? Why do you want to have kids? Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? And the answer has to be very crystal clear. It's not just because, like, I have an answer on why I wanted to have kids, and I had to get very clear before I wanted to have kids. Most of us have kids because everybody's having kids. So it's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get married. You're supposed to do this. And I think the factor with entrepreneurship, don't let the lifestyle fool you. I mean, it takes a lot of work. And you have to ask yourself the question, are you really willing to go through it? If yes, Chris, here's the one thing I do advise to Brian, to everybody. I think everybody ought to run a part-time business. Affiliate marketing, great. Sell products on the side, garage, whatever it is, get your real estate license, sell real estate on the side, get an insurance license, sell insurance on the side, and maintain your job. And put 10 or 15 hours into it. I think everybody ought to do it and can do it. Everybody. So, but the word of entrepreneurs, multidimensional. At what level do you want to go? I mean, do you want to go building a business doing 50 grand a year? Great, go do it. Everybody ought to do it. Do you want to build a business doing $1 million a year? Well, maybe not everybody can. Well, you can build $1 million a year business. 10 million is the interesting number because very few get to the 10 million. 1 of 5, a lot of people get stuck to 1 of 5. 10 is, difficult. Then from 10, do you want to do $100 million a year? Do you want to get to $1 billion? I mean, the game changes at that point, right? But the more clear you are on your outcome of everything you do in life, kids, wife, business, career, friendship, spiritual, exercise, the more clear those outcomes are, the more fluid the action is going to be taken because you know why you're doing it. And so, yes, I think today social media fools the reality of being an entrepreneur.
Do you think you do the same by putting out the videos, or do you try to make it clear with people that, look, this is taking work?
Oh, I make it clear that it's work. I make it clear that it's pain. But I try to sell the reward, and I try to sell the idea of it has to matter to you. Like what you do here with creating content. Think about how many people started a podcast and they had potential, but they stopped.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Think about how much work it takes to run a podcast, okay? You have a wife, you have a kid, you have a business, you have all these other things. Think about the effort it takes. Think about the discipline. Think about the level of consistency to find a guest, to interview, to questions, to research, to content, to all this stuff takes a lot of effort, right? But you're doing it. It's very obvious you're enjoying it and it matters to you. And that's why you're effective, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You see some people that it doesn't matter to them, they're winging it. So that's the differentiator between an amateur and a pro. A pro's trying to figure out a way to be prolific because it matters to them. So the one thing with Valuetainment that you get is you will hear me talk about clarity and it mattering to you so many times. Because if it does, the world better get out of your way because you're going to get what you want at whatever level you want.
Right. You weren't always a fan of capitalism, but you switched and now believe it is the solution. And there was a point where your dad was going through series of operations, and you realized that you didn't have the choice and that you had to rely on other people to take care of him. Is that what turned the switch with you?
Because like my body, every time I go there, my body just, I mean, listen, when that happened that day and he says, you're not paying for this, the government, the taxpayers are paying for this. My dad's in a hospital having a heart attack. He had his 13th heart attack. And I'm looking at the saying, if this man dies, I never met my grandpa. My kids have to know their grandpa. And that's my dad.